Center for Air Power Studies, CAPS, 5th of January 2024, The Increasing Sino-Afghan Diplomatic Bond and Its Consequences for India and Central Asia. On December 1, 2023, Assadullah Bilal Karimi, a former Taliban spokesman, was Afghanistan's ambassador to China. Since the Taliban took over Afghanistan, he is the first accredited Afghan envoy to any nation. This came before Afghanistan gave the new Chinese ambassador to Kabul a hearty welcome in July 2023. Long-standing international diplomatic customs model a new envoy's presentation of credentials to any accredited nation. Zabihullah Mujahid, the chief spokesman for the Taliban, said in July 2023 that the new Chinese envoy's presentation of certificates is also a signal to other nations to approach and engage with the Taliban-led government. Afghanistan's open desire to accept progressive diplomatic actions and alliances from other nations is suggested by this assertion. In addition to being detrimental to Indian interests in Central Asia, there has been a discernible Chinese advance throughout the region, which could eventually throw doubt on the security symmetry that currently exists there too. Given this, it would be prudent to investigate the potential effects of growing Chinese involvement in Afghanistan, particularly given that it acts as India's entry point into Central Asia. The implications of it for Indian interests in Central Asia are also worth investigating. Chinese participation in Afghanistan. Due to the aggressive and undemocratic manner in which the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan, there are concerns around the world. As a result, Afghanistan must express its interest in obtaining international recognition through the statement made by Zabihullah Mujahid, the Taliban's chief spokesperson, in July 2023. This is particularly true given that a sizable portion of the world, including India, has manifestly hesitated, from accepting the Taliban government in an open and timely manner, recognizing that the Taliban takeover of power in Afghanistan was achieved through less than democratic channels. The Taliban leadership had been working very hard to get international recognition for their administration because they needed to revive the collapsing Afghan economy, and the US, World Bank, and IMF had refused to approve the funding that they had promised. In these conditions, China appoints its ambassador to Afghanistan, making it the first nation to establish diplomatic ties. This is in addition to Wang Wenbin, a spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, saying that China believes that Afghanistan should not be excluded from the international community because China has been a friendly neighbor of Afghanistan for a long time. With this remark, China appears to be trying to persuade the world community to keep up the conversation and support the nation in establishing an inclusive political framework, embracing moderate policies, fighting terrorism, and cultivating amicable relations with other countries. China's growing influence in Afghanistan will probably jeopardize India's regional security interests and its energy ambitions in Central Asia. This is especially important for the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India (TAPI) gas pipeline, an energy logistics project run by the Indian government that must pass through Afghanistan to reach India. China's engagement in Central Asia as a means of achieving its global objectives. China, a prominent economic and scientific force, has recently been observed quietly encroaching into Central Asia. By many measures, however, the success of Chinese designs in this power struggle would not be conducive to India's strategic outreach to Central Asia. The recent, steady increase of Chinese power in the geopolitical context of Central Asia was demonstrated by Chinese President Xi Jinping's May 2023 hosting of counterparts from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. The objectives of this summit were to establish economic promotion institutions such as Central Asia-China Business Council, strengthen the ties between the Chinese government and its counterparts in Central Asia, and improve educational and cultural exchanges. 54 agreements, 19 new platforms and mechanisms for collaboration, and 9 multilateral documents, including the Shen Declaration, were signed during this meeting. Combined with China's recent initiatives to enhance the SCO and its growing influence in the South China Sea with the development of the Gwadar port, these factors could eventually lead to an unbalanced power structure in the Central Asian region. These could jeopardize India's standing in Central Asia by creating a subtle power imbalance. India's diplomatic roadmap for China's full-scale invasion of the Indian subcontinent. Given China's current participation in Afghanistan and Central Asia, it could be wise to consider the ideal forms for India's diplomacy in these regions. The following characterizes how Indian foreign policy has taken shape in the two domains: Afghanistan and India. Given that Afghanistan serves as India's entry point into Central Asia and the recent unsettling events following the Taliban takeover, the country has created a distinct subcategory called the Emergency X Miscellaneous Visa for Afghan people who wish to visit India. Additionally, orders were made to cancel the physical visas that Afghan nationals who weren't in India physically held. In addition to hastily evacuating its citizens who are still in Afghanistan to guarantee their safety in the unstable country, India has purposefully taken a cautious stance by neither criticizing nor endorsing the Taliban. From this perspective, it would be appropriate to note that the top priority at this point is to address India's security concerns related to the influx of drugs and terrorist activities that are being coordinated from Afghanistan as the staging base. In other words, security issues should be the main focus of India's diplomacy with Afghanistan. Central Asia and India. About Central Asia, Indian diplomacy must demonstrate a proactive stance with an emphasis on effectively managing the region's strategic partnerships. Due in large part to the stability that the current government enjoys, a clear majority, India has gained great respect from other countries. India's skill in managing significant powers like the United States and Russia and smaller nations like Japan and others in the subcontinent highlights confidence in India's ability to counteract Chinese influence in Central Asia. Indian diplomacy in the region, first limited to cultural exchanges, appears dormant, as seen by the country's intense contact with Central Asia. India's foreign policy started to shift from the restricted exchanges of the past to the Connect Central Asia policy of 2012, which served as the cornerstone for developing productive ties with Central Asia. Additionally, several trips were made by Indian leaders, including SMT. Pratibha Patil was the President of India in 2009, Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2015, and President Ramnath Kovind in April 2022. The Uzbek President, Islam Karimov, then made reciprocal trips to India in 1991, 1994, 2000, 2005, and 2011, to name a few. Adding to the string of bilateral visits, the states of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan were visited by the late Indian Foreign Minister, SMT. Sushma Swaraj, from August 2 to 5, 2018. After holding multiple rounds of meetings with her counterparts, she talked about multifaceted relations in the political, parliamentary, defense, science and technology, health, and other sectors. These meetings involved strategic partnerships and issues involving nuclear security summits. These exchanges aim to strengthen the push for deeper bilateral connections. It appears to have highlighted the feasibility of India's several strategic initiatives. Furthermore, China appears to have entered the Central Asian battlefield due to India's proactive diplomatic strategy, demonstrating a clear sense of urgency regarding establishing commercial and physical connections with Europe and Central Asia. Even though India entered the Central Asian arena later than the other two leftist giants, China and Russia, these leftist powers were compelled to accelerate their efforts to further solidify their influence in the region due to India's growing interest and proactive involvement. Superscript 1 Furthermore, India appears to have taken the lead in its relations with Central Asia out of a sense of urgency to protect its interests there. India should take decisive steps to resist China's ambitions in Central Asia, especially in light of the region's alarmingly increasing effect on China. China's gradual ascent to global economic dominance in recent years should serve as the primary model for Indian policymaking. China's involvement in Central Asia was a rivalry with other countries, including the West, Russia, and India, the latter of which entered the region last. Due to its parallel affinity with all 5 of the Central Asian states and its collaboration in economics, defense, education, culture, and energy, China's influence inside the SCO has grown. For any business venture in Central Asia to succeed, India, as a rising Vishwaguru, must broaden its sphere of influence by supporting Central Asian states economically, technologically, and in terms of infrastructure, among other things, based on the principle of mutual gains. Doing so will likely position India as a significant player in the region. Fortunately, India appears to have recognized this early on and has, since 2015, been redoubling its efforts to fortify and maintain its position in Central Asia by concentrating on the region. Nonetheless, the region's increasing reliance on China appears to underscore the possibility of gradually but unquestionably shifting the balance of power in Central Asia. The fact that China's military presence in Central Asia is steadily growing only strengthens this claim. Therefore, by subtly portraying itself as a kind protector, India must be able to maintain and expand its previously practiced strategic region forward-thinking diplomacy throughout the Central Asian region. About Central Asia, this is a crucial requirement on which India must concentrate. Consequently, it would be equally beneficial if Indian foreign policy adopted a more active Track 2/public diplomacy approach in Central Asia. India must advance its diverse interests in Central Asia, especially its energy interests, since a country's government must foster an atmosphere that permits the pursuit of public welfare initiatives. India needs to protect its energy interests, primarily in Central Asia. Even though China is firmly gaining ground in Central Asia faster than before, there are enough reasons to believe that India, with its effective diplomacy of playing on the front foot, enjoys the capability to tackle the rising Chinese influence in the region efficiently. Final thoughts on opposing Chinese hegemony. In conclusion, India's foreign policy in Afghanistan must be primarily security-oriented as diplomatic ties between China, Afghanistan, and Central Asia expand. It must be comprehensive, including Central Asia's diplomatic, economic, cultural, and security aspects. India can significantly contribute to establishing a favorable diplomatic climate in Central Asia, facilitating its access to the region by focusing on economic development, regional cooperation, effective Track 2 diplomacy, people-to-people connections, and advancing security interests. According to the current regional equations, India's ability to successfully shape a positive and long-lasting impact in the Central Asian region may depend on its ability to adopt a balanced and comprehensive approach that takes into account the interests of all stakeholders, including the Indian industry, infrastructure development agencies, banking and technological institutions, and a host of other groups that may be involved in the effort to support the development and sustenance of logistics infrastructure in Central Asia. It carries the potential to be the key to India's success in forming a positive and lasting impact in the Central Asian region. And a host of others, including culture, health, and educational echelons, which may be involved in the effort to assist the development and sustenance of logistics infrastructure in Central Asia.